here, and then I'll turn to you. Cool. Hello and welcome to another edition of DSU Inside Perspective. I'm Carlos Holmes, and this is the show where we talk to faculty, staff, students, and guests about current affairs or things that are going on at the great institution of Delaware State University. Today we have brought back Hans Riegel, who's an assistant professor of aviation here in our aviation program at Delaware State University. And we've brought him on because we're still talking about this great mystery of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Hans, thank you for coming back to join us.
My pleasure.
Today.
Nice to see you, Carlos.
Let me go back to something I was thinking about. You know, one of my favorite movies is Flight 93. Okay, and that's the story of the 9/11 flight that didn't make it to its destination, and the people revolted and the plane went down. But that showed the scene of cockpit intrusion.
Yes.
In today's world, certainly everybody has learned from 9/11, but are there different standards for security, for cockpit security, among different airlines or different countries that have aviation?
Yes, there are, Carlos. And in the U.S., we strengthened. I was an airline pilot during 9/11, and we changed our cockpit entry procedures, and the doors also, and the whole procedure got much stronger. So the doors were strengthened, things were changed about the door, the procedure for getting in, all that was modified, made much stronger. Having said that, there are some air carriers in the Middle East where the pilots don't even come out of the cockpit area due to security during a flight. So typically at the airlines we would come out if we had to use the restroom, and for that reason only. In some of the Middle Eastern carriers, they have a door that is beyond the bathrooms, and they have a lavatory facility just for the flight crew to keep it extra safe.
Mm-hmm. The segments we are doing on Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 are taking place on March 28th. Today is the day we've heard reports that they are sighting some debris out there in the southern part of the Indian Ocean. They're, as we speak right now, they are speeding ships towards that section to see if those are indeed parts of Flight 370. But we still have the fundamental mystery of how this happened, what happened. And that's why I bring the cockpit security, because as you shared with us in the last, the first part of this interview, you didn't think it was a mechanical error or some calamity in the air. It's looking more like something to do with somebody on the plane, whether it be the pilot or hijacker, something which I call dastardly took place on this plane. Having said this, there's a black box out there somewhere. Okay, and they really want to get this black box. It's somewhere wherever the plane went down, if indeed the plane did go down.
Yes.
What is the black box going to tell us, and is it going to help us unravel more information than just flight information? Is it going to be able to tell us what happened here?
Absolutely, it will provide critical information. There are two components to that. One is the cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, and what that does is record about the last 2 hours of the flight and what went on in the cockpit.
Now, is that recording what's going on in the cockpit or what he's saying in the microphone?
Both. So it has ambient noise that it receives, just a microphone in the cockpit itself, and then also any transmission to air traffic control would also be recorded by that. I think the FAA requires that the last 30 minutes of a flight are recorded, but I think some of the newer planes, it just records longer, 30 minutes is a minimum. So they will have that, hopefully, if they find it. And the other component is the flight data recorder. And what that does is it records certain parameters, the positions of the flight controls, the engine power. It monitors a lot of the engine instruments to also give an indication maybe of what happened. Investigators would use both those components along with everything else, satellite imagery or air traffic control data, to try to put together this puzzle of what happened.
Now, there's been a lot of talk about the clock is ticking on this black box. If they don't get to it in a certain amount of time, they may not be able to, what, extract information? Explain that.
The information will still be on there. However, the ability to find it will be much more difficult. So a few years ago, I think it was 2009, but a few years back, an Air France jetliner went down over the Atlantic, and it was in a 2.5 miles deep water or so, and it took months to find that black box. For about 30 days, once the crash happens, there's a signal that is emitted by the black boxes, and so they have 30 days to more easily find it because it's just radiating a beam. We have a receiver that the Navy owns, a submersible, and that can detect that signal. So those guys, if they hear it, they'll be able to find it. If not, it's actually finding the wreck and then going, which will take a longer time possibly, and then also going to that specific location on the airplane and finding that black box.
Now, let's talk about what they're doing now and going forward. They have located what they're seeing out there from planes as debris out there. Ships are rushing to there. They're supposed to get there tomorrow, which would be Saturday, March 29th.
Yes.
If it is indeed Flight 370, then what happens next?
Well, they're going to have to identify it as such and then try to, just using, I would say, meteorologic data, figure out where that drifted from, because I don't think every piece of that aircraft is floating, and some of the bigger pieces may be under the surface, if in fact that is part of the crash.
To get to this black box, do you know how many feet how far down is that? That's a couple miles, isn't it?
It could be. It depends on where in the ocean it went down. If in fact it went down, we still don't totally know that it went down. I'm assuming it did, and so are a lot of other people, but it depends if it in fact went down in the ocean, where it is, because the depth of the ocean there varies a lot. And
we have a precedent before with a plane that's gone down in the ocean.
Absolutely.
Did they pull the plane back up?
They pulled pieces of it up, and yes.
What flight are we talking about?
Well, there are several. One was TWA 800, and if you recall, that was the one off of the coast of New York that it was a 747 jumbo jet. It was determined that that was caused by an explosion in the fuel tank. The pieces of debris that are claimed to have been seen in the Indian Ocean kind of match that pattern of that aircraft. So we have TWA 800, and then also the Air France jet that crashed a few years ago was in ocean very deep, couple miles deep, and they had to use submersibles. I don't know how many pieces they got out, but they did get the black boxes and they found them.
Well, I guess one reliable piece of technology that we've learned from this Flight 370 is the satellite capability to be able to track a plane. And apparently, from what has been reported in the past, from the pings and the change in direction, that was pretty close to being dead on, right?
Well, we think. Still no pieces.
Well, yeah, we don't know.
We don't know. And
assuming that those pieces
it's a new
there.
technology, yes. And this is the first time that technology has been employed. We got to remember that 3/4 of the Earth is covered in water. Where that jetliner is alleged to have gone down is really in the middle of nowhere. And so, yeah, without that satellite data, this would have been even more difficult. And I'd also like to add the one other thing, just to add another mystery part to it, is not only do the aircrew, the pilots give reports and all, the engines actually in these modern planes, the engines will send data to the ground just to monitor their performance and, when maintenance will need to be done and all that. Somehow, from the reports I've read, when the pilots for position and the transponder codes stopped sending a position and altitude, the engines also did not send any data after that, is what I've heard. So that even makes it more mysterious.
Well, there's a plane somewhere out there in the ocean, and hopefully they find it soon. we haven't learned anything else. We've learned how vast that ocean is and how hard it is to find something like this. Hans, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure.
Providing your perspective.
Thank you, Carlos.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of DSU Inside Perspective. Have a good day.